So the state officially wrapped its case against Oscar Pistorius yesterday, and the question on everyone's mind is, did they present enough evidence to convince the court of a premeditated murder charge against the former Paralympian without any reasonable doubt? Now with us on the line is Teresa Taylor from the start to give us a summary of the day's events. Teresa, once again, thank you very much for taking our call. Now, you've been to the court every single day. You've chatted to some of the forensic experts and the legal experts on a daily basis. What is the consensus among the media and those that have had the chance to speak to these experts on the strength of the state's case so far?
Hi. Well, I think obviously, as with anything, there's a variety of views, but definitely the opinion that's coming across to me is that the state definitely has a case, and potentially quite a strong case. At this stage, had they presented a very weak case, the defense could have applied for what's called a discharge, where they say to the judge, basically, the state's case is so weak, there's no chance of conviction, and this should be thrown out at this stage. And they didn't do that yesterday. I mean, I suppose they could potentially still do it on Friday, but it seems very unlikely. So the state does have a case, and that needs to be answered. And that's sort of the view that's been coming across from the experts that I've spoken to.
Yeah, and I think it goes without question that Advocate Barry Rue has put up a very big fight at every single turn, trying to poke holes into the testimony of just about every witness. What have been some of the kind of, if you could call them, major hits that the state's case has taken from the defense so far?
Well, I think, on the expert witnesses, on the police, I think a lot of the cross-examination has focused on what they've done wrong, procedures that haven't been followed, little funny things in pictures, a footprint on a door, where the cell phone, there was a towel over the cell phone, you've moved the towel, and now you haven't captioned the picture. And basically almost sort of trying to say, why should we trust anything that you've done when you've made these errors? And I think probably the most sort of testimony that took the most hits was from Colonel van Meulen, the cricket bat expert. Yeah. And the defense obviously agreed with that. They brought him back yesterday for a re-examination right at the end of the trial, just to sort of take another bite from the apple. So that's what the experts have focused around, really pointing out those errors. And some of those errors have been quite damning and difficult for the police to explain. On the neighbors, it's really focused on your memory's not as good as you say it is. Say with Mrs. Stipp, her originally saying she saw a man in the window, then taking that back later. And then also focused around collusion. Obviously, we had some very strong neighbor witnesses, but, two couples, husbands and wives that live together, that talk about things, that share their feelings, all of those kind of things. And a lot of the defense's cross-examination is focused around, well, this is not just your story, this is the story of you and your husband. I mean, Barry Rue actually said to Charles Johnson, oh, you and your wife could have stood together in the witness box. Yes. You didn't need to come here alone. So I think those are sort of the major things that the defense is focused on, and trying to sort of rip apart the state's case. Yeah,
and when we take a look at two of the most significant aspects of the state's case so far, the screaming and the cell phone records, how do you think these will play out?
Well, the screaming is really important because it's a direct contradiction to Oscar Pistorius' version of events. If the state can show that the screaming happened as their neighbors seem to have said it did, that there were shots, there were sounds, there was a woman screaming, and then there were shots. That's a direct contradiction to what Oscar said, and so that would mean that he's lying essentially. And a lot of the experts that I've spoken to really felt like the state saved the best for last. They felt that Annette Stipp was an exceptionally strong witness, and we have seen some other very strong witnesses. I mean, Michelle Berger was very good, but they said that Annette Stipp knew how to play it. She knew when to make concessions. She knew when to say, yes, actually, I said I saw a man and I didn't. So I took that back. But when she was determined on things, she stuck with that. It was absolutely a woman screaming. There's no way it was a man. And they felt that was very damning testimony. Yeah. So the screaming is extremely important. And then in terms of the cell phone records, other people that I've spoken to really felt like that was what made the case. There's been a lot of assessment of how Oscar's version doesn't make sense. Yes. Why would he do this? But perhaps there hasn't been enough assessment of the state's version not making sense. Why would a man in a 3-month relationship with a woman wake up in the middle of the night and shoot her in cold blood?
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of people have thought that up until this point, no motive for that had been shown. And the cell phone record gave the first bit of motive, the first bit to say, okay, this is not a completely ridiculous thing to suggest.
Yes.
This is actually quite plausible. They've had fights before. She said how scared she was of him and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Teresa, thank you very much for your time. We really do appreciate it.
Sure, my pleasure.
That is Teresa Taylor from The Star giving us a summary of yesterday's events at the North Gauteng High Court. Of course, your daily update of the Oscar Pistorius trial, which continues on Friday with the defence preparing their first witness. And no doubt Advocate Barry Rue will be pulling out all the stops to protect the man that he says is innocent. Now, don't forget to also share your thoughts on our Facebook page. And for more in-depth details on the trial, visit www.sabcnews.com. Now, the question we're asking on our Facebook page this morning, Expresso Morning Show, SABC3, is whether you think the state has put up a strong enough case to suggest a guilty verdict. Let us know. We'll be reading those comments a bit later on. Stay tuned to your Feel Good Breakfast Show.